anybody else still in the car with Sierra and Mr. LaForce? Those are your actual names, right? Sierra and Mr. LaForce. It's just one of those collisions of different ways of knowing, and it's one of those things where we have this strident certainty in our culture, and not a lot of collisions of different ways of knowing. And it's one of the things that interests me. I'm interested in how we communicate particularly difficult conversations, challenging conversations. So I want to take exactly off on some of the things that you were saying and some of the comments that were made. Because I've spent my career as an emergency room doctor, which is sort of the headquarters for difficult conversations. And I want to tell you a few stories, starting with the first year of my training as a doctor, when an instructor handed me a doll and said, this baby, this newborn, has all the physical findings of Down syndrome. That woman, she said, pointing past a two-way mirror, past a video camera to a woman sitting at a table, that woman is this baby's mother. I want you to go in there, tell her your findings and your concerns and what you intend to do to investigate them. You understand? Yes, I said. She said, okay, go. That was a long time ago. I don't remember exactly what was in my mind as I crossed that floor, but I remember generally what was in my mind, because like you folks, I got into medical school by jumping through hoops. I was thinking, this is a test. How do I nail it? I was thinking, this is a plastic doll, this woman's an actor employed by the medical school, this is fake. I was thinking, this is going to be videotaped and critiqued with this instructor in front of my peers. I hope I don't look like a jerk. 5% of my mind was trying to recall the physical findings and diagnostic approach to Down syndrome. The remaining 95% of my mind was focused on my performance, because that's the way I'd been taught to think. But in the years since then, there's been hundreds of occasions where I've walked into rooms to discuss concerning findings, frightening findings, and give devastating news. And what's changed most is my mental approach as I cross that floor. The deliberate process I go through as I'm walking into that room. 3 steps for me. First is get over myself. Second is to see the situation through the other person's eyes and to actively indicate that I understand their point of view. And the third is to state the facts in the plan plainly, without subtraction, without evasion, without digression. It may seem fairly self-evident, but believe me, in moments like this, there's a great deal of turmoil, adrenaline, things that make it tough to gain focus. And so we've got to keep it simple. I find that I cannot call upon a state of mind of empathy at will. That the more challenging the circumstances, the more I need to carve a path through events and light it with these 3 simple steps in order to get myself to a place where empathy can rise of its own accord. Get over yourself means put aside the fact that this is a performance and that somebody might be evaluating whether you're a good doctor or not. But also put aside the patient in room 2 with the chest pain. Put aside the 9-year-old with a migraine that's just thrown up. Her parents are upset because we don't have control of her symptoms. Put aside the ambulance on the way in with the lady who's fallen. Sounds like she might have a hip fracture. Put everything aside so that the solitary channel of your attention is focused. And that's one thing for your generation more than any other to attend to, is that solitary channel. We act like we have several inputs. We have one. We'd like to have 5 or more outputs coming at us at the same time. Excuse me. Right? I love this thing. But we have to be careful and attend to that solitary channel and where it's focused. In a moment like this, as if nothing else existed. No other greater task was before us. Seeing through the other person's eyes is largely an act of projection, which means sometimes guesswork. But in a very short period of time, you often get an opportunity to ask some open-ended questions and gain more. I can't tell you the number of times I've been standing at the bedside of someone who's just died, and the family and friends are in a semicircle around the bed, and there's a stillness that occurs after all the first things have been said. And in that moment, I'll say, tell me about it. And it's as if you lanced a wound. What pours forth from these folks is the story of this person told by the people who just lost him forever. And in their eyes, in their voices, in their participation or their lack of participation is everything you need to know to see the circumstance through their eyes. Indicating that you understand their point of view doesn't mean taking on their point of view. It means demonstrating that you're listening. Sometimes that's by asking something to clarify their point of view. Sometimes it's simply reflective. The number of times in my career somebody said, I'm mad as hell about X, and I've said, it sounds like you're mad about X. And not once has anybody said, what is this, a goddamn echo chamber? Because they're being heard. They're being heard. One of the things we do when we have a collision of conflict, of different ways of knowing, is deny the other person the right to their point of view. If you want to add to injury, deny somebody a voice. Stating the facts plainly without subtraction, digression, we have an instinct as healers to soothe. That's where the subtraction and evasion can come in. What a surgeon I trained with used to say is feel the wind and stride into the teeth of the wind. I know a number of surgeons who are really comfortable with cheesy metaphors. So, somehow that seems to travel and fit around in people's body cavities while they sleep. But this one surgeon who I admired as a communicator used to say, feel the wind and stride into the teeth of the wind. And what he meant, I think, was that we often tried to ride with the wind or across the wind or duck the wind. But not at times like these. Jump ahead 7 years of my training. I'm almost done. I can see the finish line. I've been a doctor for 3 years. For 5 years, I've been a member of the code team. The code team are the ones who are called to anywhere in the hospital where someone's heart has stopped. And there's a person who handles the airway, another person doing the bagging for the respiration, another person doing chest compressions, one or two people starting IV access and giving medications, one person recording, and one person in charge. And at this point, I'm not only in charge. I have some people who are attending, who are done with their training, supervising me, but I'm in charge, which means I decide what meds, what time, what shocks, when to stop, when it's reached the point that there's no hope. On this one occasion, this nice old fellow has pulled out of an intersection without even seeing the truck that hits him right in the passenger side door, where his wife of 46 years is sitting, and she's gone. No signs of life at the scene. But as a culture, we can't agree when hopeless is really hopeless, and so she's resuscitated in the field. I think every effort and no return of circulation occurs. And she arrives in the ER, and I'm running the code, and it's hopeless. But after a period of resuscitation, I've evolved at this point my own particular style for how you manage this cessation of resuscitation, which is to say I give my second in command a few minutes of instruction, and I go out and find the family. And in this case, you know, it's just this old fellow who's uninjured physically, sitting alone in a room. What I do is tell the family what's up, and when they're ready, have them come in and hold the hands, circle around, touching the leg, as we, I say hold CPR. And we let him go. And I'm trying to see through this fellow's eyes, and I'm thinking, he knows. He saw her with no signs of life. He saw the resuscitation. The poor guy's been in this room by himself for 15 minutes, knowing what he saw. He knows. I ask him if he's ready. He comes in, and he's sitting down, holding her hand, as I say, hold CPR. But I was wrong. After an instant, he jumps to his feet and starts doing chest compressions, calling her name. And we're just standing around like a bunch of jerks, and this old fellow is doing CPR on his wife. And there's this spasm, this instant of panic, because the hierarchy has been subverted here. And the attendings don't know whether they should step in at this point. After a few compressions, I say, here, hold her hand. I'll do that. I begin the chest compressions. After 30 seconds, I say, hold CPR. Check for pulse. No pulse. Could I have lead 1, please? No pulse. Lead 2? No pulse. Continue CPR. 30 seconds more. Hold CPR. Check for pulse, please. Lead 1, please, no pulse. Lead 2, no pulse. Continue CPR. He's running the code. He is running the code. He nods, yes. And I continue CPR, and I contemplate saying, sir, we'll do this as long as you want. I contemplate if this goes on for 15 minutes, taking him back to that small room and talking about the circulation to the brain during the time that there was no resuscitation happening. But before 30 more seconds goes by, he says, stop. Please, God, just stop. In your lives, you're going to have moments of conflict. You're going to stride into situations where there's intense challenges, where there's collisions of different ways of knowing, where some of the decisions that have to be made are informed by different perspectives, and some of those decisions will have consequences that will last a generation. No matter what you do in your life, you're going to have these moments. By definition, they're going to come without the possibility of anticipating them. You're going to be walking in a room thinking, what the hell am I going to say? I'll tell you from my years of my experience that I have a particular set of steps that I can recommend just as a place to start, which is to get over myself. See the situation through the other person's eyes, acknowledge actively that I hear them. Stride in the teeth of wind. Good luck.